Bienvenidos, worldwide fans of our planet's hottest entertainment with an edge that boldly goes where no one has gone before. I'm Jaime En Fuego, and I cordially welcome you to another of this new weekly ongoing coverage on my namesake program, Enfuegotainment. That's right, this is all about the second episode of the CBS All Access Picard Star Trek series. Yes, so it's kind of a sequel to Nemesis and TNG and all of the stuff, you know, all good things and whatever. And also very just interestingly tying itself into a big plot point that was introduced initially in the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot, because that was actually in continuity. It formed a new timeline, all this different stuff. So this is just a rapid review, which very similar to what I did with The Mandalorian, week in and week out. I'm going to be just giving some very brief impressions, non-spoilery, in the same fashion here. So no bueno malo feo as I typically do. It's just, you know, very much just, you know, raw, fresh reactions and stuff like that. And yeah, so I will obviously at least spoil bits that we had from the previous episode. And in that regard, yeah, Picard is, he's in France, he's chilling, he's growing, you know, grapes, making wine, doing his own thing. He's got a couple Romulans with him that are kind of, you know, people who work on the property with him and seem, you know, friends slash workers, but on the borderline of being loved ones. And so that's a big thing, but it really just, as far as our narrative takes shape and comes into play, when there is this young woman who has her boyfriend killed by these presumed, you know, masked marauders that, you know, teleport into her apartment, and she's studying at Starfleet, and they kill her boyfriend, they attempt to kill her, and she has some sort of ability that just manifests itself suddenly in her. She takes them down, she contacts her mother says, no, you need to contact, you know, Jean-Luc Picard, find him, he will be able to allow you to discover some answers. And she discovers a little bit, but she's in denial majorly about what he thinks she might be, which is a synthetic that has some sort of connection to none other than the deceased at the end of Nemesis. That's right, Star Trek Nemesis, the one that had you know, Tom Hardy playing this cloned version of Picard and everything. Yeah, Data sacrificed himself at the end of that. And so Picard still has these dreams, and it's kind of a tie-in with the brain disorder, just, you know, I don't know, the bad condition, degenerative, in fact, that is hinted at in All Good Things, the final episode of TNG. And yeah, he's trying to convince her that she has some sort of association with Data, and she is a synthetic. Synthetics have been banned at this point because of this very Blade Runner-y ripoff bit that apparently went down on Mars, following the whole just Romulan, if I remember correctly, supernova of this sun next to their planet, and that's how Spock, this is all very heavy stuff, obviously, heavy lifting. That's how Spock created this alternate universe, was through that event, and, you know, trying to avert it and so on. And yes, that's a lot for the casual fan of Star Trek to sink your teeth into. This is one that I think people have the capacity to enjoy, even as we segue into the second episode, but it's a lot to wrap your head around. It's full of Easter eggs, there's tons going on, and yeah, this girl who came to Picard in the previous episode, she had those same masked marauder people, you know, come in and kill her basically right in front of Picard's eyes. And then we ended the episode with a shot of this Borg cube that these Vulcans and, excuse me, not Vulcans, Romulans, just to be specific, far a little more sinister, obviously. And yeah, they've employed a bunch of other workers, and it seems to be a research facility, and that's about all we got. That was the big reveal at the end of the first episode. So here in this second one, it's really much like in those holodeck episodes where Picard, you know, loved being that sleuth, and the name of the character he enjoyed playing so much, I forget to remember, but man, some of those best TNG episodes were like on the holodeck, whether it was Fistful of Datas or whether it was stuff with Moriarty and him gaining some sort of sentience, I guess, and, you know, if I'm totally not butchering the word, but just self-awareness. and trying to actually leave the holo program himself. And so that was really cool. But the reason I mention all of that is because Picard always loved a hunt, an investigation, and just being a sleuth, and that sort of person wearing that proverbial hat, so to speak. As did Data too, and they bonded over those situations in various TNG episodes. And so even though this one girl has been killed, Picard, from his talks with this particular scientist woman, I believe in Okinawa, if I remember correctly, at a Starfleet training spot and stuff. She's like, well, there is this particular guy who is no longer with us here. We don't even know if he is even alive anymore, but before this whole synthetic uprising and all the murders and stuff that went down on Mars all those years ago that stopped Starfleet from being able to house these displaced Romulans, and it's just, there's so much, it's very politics heavy. You think that like Star Wars in the prequel era is like politics heavy and stuff like that? Oh my lord. Star Trek most definitely has its intensive moments, especially in this, but it's fascinating. If you want to really pay attention, make the deep dive. And so apparently this particular guy was working on stuff with Data, it seems like, at one particular time, and he was trying to create these dueling twin synthetics from some of his circuitry. And so we're led to believe, at least, that one of them is the girl that Jean-Luc saw killed, and there is a corresponding one that happens to be working on this former Borg cube that is now, they're really just using it almost as like some sort of excavation attempt, to understand what the Borg culture was about and how they assimilated and all of the testing that's going down. And there's, unfortunately for me, a very silly, derpy love story going down with this other presumed synthetic, the twin, the other corresponding creation. They've only been seemingly alive for a few years, and yet they think they're human. That's the biggest thing. They think that they're human because they have all these false memories and so on and so forth. That's all been programmed in. And at the beginning of this episode, you see that Mars uprising, briefly, happens to go down on the date of first contact, which is obviously a reference to, the second TNG movie, all the first contact stuff, and great movie. Still the best of the ones that they did with the Next Generation crew, although some people still contend that Generations, with being the bridging film, it was better. But I mean, Nemesis was a big disappointment, and Insurrection, in my estimation, sucked. So I mean, that's really all that you can say in that regard. But yeah, I guess getting to see what goes down on Mars in that bit, it's okay. But yeah, it flash forwards to Jean-Luc trying to go back to the scene of the crime and what happened at this girl's apartment before she was killed, before she consulted Jean-Luc. He goes back to Starfleet and tries to be reinstated, not just as an admiral, because I don't think the distinction always is ever going to go away, but he's like, I have this thing that I need to do, I need to go investigate. So once again, the further investigation aspect, and he's like, I'm okay with being demoted if it gives me the ability to actually get a small warp level ship and put a crew together. Nothing big time, but it's just something very important to me. And he has this contentious bit with this woman that, she's just like, how dare you? I can't remember if she says you patronize me or whatever the hell it is, but it's a callback to, man, something I saw in the early 90s, like big time. Something with Harrison Ford. Oh, I'm trying to remember if it was one of the Jack Reach. Anyway, I'm not going to think about it too much, but the whole thing is Easter Egg City. From the Stargazer, you see the old doctor who was in a few different TNG episodes and stuff. So this really is very closely connected, but it's like half of a story that I'm enjoying and another half that I'm finding kind of pedestrian and not very Star Trek, regrettably. And that's the stuff with this twin synthetic on the Borg cube and her little romance with this Romulan younger, that I didn't know Romulans could be so hot. Neither did I. It just doesn't feel like Star Trek when we have that stuff going down. So I don't know, since I can't really spoil very much beyond this, you know, Stewart is great. He's very, I don't know, it's just, it's wonderful to see him back in this role, as I mentioned in the previous episode, even if he does feel a little out of place with some of the storytelling and how it's being put forth. Akiva Goldsman, Goldsmith, I'm trying to remember the dude's name, he butchered The Dark Tower and has kind of made me hate him forever at this point. So the fact that he is a heavy hand behind this show and behind one of my most beloved sci-fi properties ever in being that particular iteration of Star Trek, I'm trying to maintain and continue with an open mind. They piqued my interest enough with some of the world building. Akiva is co-writing this with someone else, so you don't really know how much is coming from him or the other collaborator respectively, but nonetheless, the fact that there's two writers and the fact that one writer for most of what he's worked on I have despised, it kind of justifies and makes the mixed feelings about this program understandable. But are you watching this? Do you have thoughts about it like I do? Do you love The Next Generation and are just happy to see, you know, man, Patrick Stewart just doing this role again when he swore it off and said after Nemesis he would never, you know, even make a cameo in, you know, another film or series or whatever. So I'm trying my damnedest here to do the whole glass half full as opposed to half empty thing, but we're still going to see a lot of other characters. You know, we know Jerry Ryan's going to be on, we know Jonathan Frakes, Marina Sirtis. It's gonna have the feels in certain instances, and who knows, I mean, will we get some Michael Dorn, LeVar Burton? Could we get some surprises that are still not listed on the IMDb? I am certainly hopeful that that is the case, but who knows? Only time will tell. So, I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and here on YouTube. That's right, and you're watching stuff that I have done. There's one other, you know, the premiere Star Trek thing, so if you are all about, you know, that particular, you know, boldly going as opposed to galaxies far, far away, I love them both, so, you know, bear with it. You can like both. It's not like Metallica versus Megadeth or a Crew versus GNR kind of thing. You can enjoy them both, and there's a lot more Star Wars coverage on here, and, you know, that's just something to check out if you're into it, you know, if it's what you're into. Lots of coverage over the course of 19, novels, comic books, films, rewatches of a lot of stuff, some cool discussion, and in the next week there is going to be some extensive preliminary coverage of the 2020 Academy Awards. I'm going to do reviews of the few films that I have not seen, which include Harriet, Little Women, The Two Popes. You can find reviews of pretty much everything else on here. I'm also going to do a lengthy predictions video the morning of the Oscars that Sunday, so that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be like pre-Oscars coverage, but yes, if you have seen me on the YouTubies, it's probably previously been on the Horror Show, so unlike my typical Sunday, I'm not going to be out at the Horror Show studios in the East Valley here in the Phoenix metro area doing filming, but yeah, we have so much lock and key coverage that is about to just blow your fragile little minds, warp them, as Cartman would say. That series debuts on, I believe it's February 7th on Netflix, and Joe Hill put together with Gabriel Rodriguez and Jay Photos one of the best comics that I've ever read. Ever. Period. Immensely compelling, intriguing, I mean, all the feels, laughter, just heart-swooning moments, bitter tears of sadness. It's such a great comic if you get the chance to check it out. Cecil and I, my brother from another mother over there, as we call each other, we have read every single iteration, so all 6 of the volumes, and then we're also doing some bonus coverage of some of the one-shots and different things, and maybe some predictions. But yeah, look for all of that lock and key coverage coming just over the course of next week here. There, I should say, on the Horror Show. And then lastly, it's not on Willisgredia right now, unfortunately, because Homeboy CP from that particular YouTube channel is in YouTube jail, as we call it, for some copyright infringement stuff. But yes, myself, Him and Lindsay Mimsy from My 2 Cents of Nonsense are, on the weekly basis doing a program called Show Business. That's where we discuss weekend box office numbers. We break down the previous weekend, make predictions about the upcoming, and then lastly, we do just a little bit of palaver about the biggest entertainment stories of that preceding week. So, I've been Fuego, y'all have been awesome, and until the reel of Ka comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, Cinemigos, constant viewers and readers alike. But I am definitely hopeful that we get to share more of this discussion sooner rather than later. And obviously, you know where this goes from here. Live long and prosper.